Maritime Matters is brought to you live by Bahamas Maritime Connection.
What is maritime?
Maritime, simply put, relates to navigation or commerce on the high seas.
Some say money makes the world go round. I say ships move the money that make the world move.
Who navigates those large international ships?
How often are international ships required to be surveyed and inspected?
Maritime also protects our seas and borders by way of our local Bahamas Defense
It is
Force.
very sad to say that out of 1,500 plus ships that are registered under the Bahamian flag, only a very small amount of Bahamians are employed.
Maritime Matters.
And pleasant good evening to you, our valued listening audience. Welcome one. Welcome all. Welcome to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain. The producer for our show tonight is the great one himself, Mr. Maestro, Brother Craig Gibson. We're coming to you live via Love 97 FM studios. This is Tuesday, the 5th day of May 2026. And if it's a Tuesday, it's maritime tick, 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 tick matters. We encourage that if you're driving and tuning in with us, please do so cautiously and ensure to take your time in getting wherever it is you are trying to get safely. As the saying goes, drive to arrive alive. Our sponsors for tonight's show are 101 Pharmacy and also Island Care Pharmacy. For all your medication needs, check out my little cuz, Shantia, Hill, McBride, and her lovely team at 101 Pharmacy in Nassau and Island Care Pharmacy in Freeport. Fill a prescription at the store or send the refills via the online site 101pharmacy.com. That's 101 Pharmacy, all lowercase, all one word, .com. The three locations are East Street South, Charles Sanders Highway, and of course, Explorers Way in downtown Freeport. We are secondly sponsored by Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited. At BMC, we provide a full slate of ISPS maritime security services. Good night, Auntie May. My good old Auntie May. Auntie May, I mean you're old. You know you're old anyhow, right? Let me tell you something. My Auntie May is now 93 years old. Or should I say young? She don't like me to say old. 93 years old, young, and going strong. 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 Continue to do your thing, Auntie May. You know how I mean you roll. I love how you always got that youthful energy. Over a century, here we come. You know, dear listener, election day is fast approaching. Down now to only 1 week from today. Boy, these rallies getting fat. Look like every time we have another rally, it's getting fatter and fatter and fatter. Anybody been Gladstone Road last night? Well, let me tell you something. I've never seen Gladstone Road anything like that. I frequent Gladstone Road, so I can tell you. I mean, they had cars parking 2 deep and 3 deep all the way from Carmichael Road well past Fire Trail Road. That whole strip. And people was walking to the farmers market from those far distances. And I can tell you that they almost couldn't get everything on camera. It was just a massive crowd. So we now see these massive crowds carrying on for the existing government, the PLP, the current government, which is, well, the Davis administration, which is the current government of the day. And, of course, the Pintard administration, or what will become the Pintard administration, which is basically what? It's crazy. Now, of course, we got a third party in the mix, and that would be if that third party was to become successful, and they got representatives for all the constituencies, so we don't know how this cat could jump. You can play like you know, but you don't know, right? But if that third party was to become the administration selected, we will have the Bain administration. And that ain't me. Yeah, it's a Bain. Lincoln Bain, the more popular fella. I mean, he has become so popular of late that he's a household name. Yeah, you look at it, how people talk, this and that. The man is a household name. So we don't know how this cat can jump. We can play like we know. We can pray for whoever we think is the best choice to run the country moving forward after next week, Tuesday. We can try to convince others that this is the best party because this reason, that reason, and the next reason. But you know, until the tally is in, we truly cannot know who will emerge victorious. The reality is that the vast majority of voters, we do not hear a pin drop from. Don't mind all the noise in the market. You know, 5% of eligible voters represent over 10,000 people. That's 5% now. So if you get anything less than 10,000 people gathered together, that even a 5% of the eligible voters in this country. And of course, we are hearing noises all the time from far less than 10,000 people. It should follow, therefore, my dear listener, that over 95% of eligible voters remain silent. Mind you, they may be talking, but they're pushing nobody. We don't hear from them. They may talk a little talk amongst their family and friends, excuse me, but they're not going out in the public. They're not even attending rallies. I want you to know that less than 5% of the people who are eligible to vote actually attend rallies. So we can hear the noise as loud as it wants to get, but we can't tap into the minds of that 95%. And out of that 95%, you have a certain percentage of PLP, around 25-30. Almost the same range for the FNM. And then you got that 40%, that 40 to 50% out there. What they ain't really on nobody run. They simply vote their conscience. And it's that 40% that over the past 20 years, is it, or 25 years, that conscience was changing the administration every single lap. And of course, there's a trend of thought from various grouping that this has to end. But does it really have to end? We don't know if it have to end, because it can go on for another 25 years. Just changing. Or it could end now, because we do not know how that cat will jump. It may end by putting a third party in the mix. So we could wish, we could hope, we could pray, we could convince others, but guess what? Until after 6 p.m. on Tuesday, the 12th of May, 2026, Bahamians will not know how the cat gonna jump. And there is absolutely no way of telling how that collective, that 95%, even 100%, because people get a rally. Some of the people still vote the opposite way. And some of them, well, of course, we walk around and we see some with two different shades on it. Some got on the blue on top of the red, and some got the red on top of the blue. Ain't much yellow these days, right? And we see this all the time, because people trying to swing you to believe they get one way, see if they get. They hit the fellow on the traffic light. You could actually see one color under the next. So he changed, he switched it over halfway through the day, or whenever he feel, I don't know what he thinking, right? But he ain't missing nothing. And he have one or two, and he obviously switch it when he feel like. So colors is good. But you know, them colors, they can only say so much. Because what I found in the last couple elections, and I don't miss no voting, right? I always go in the booth and vote, right? And like I said earlier, sometimes I change my mind just before I vote, and change my mind and vote somewhere else, or for someone else who I thought I was good, because I really on nobody run like that. And so these people, they wearing all these colors, and those colors, because sometimes you go to the voting stations, voting venues, and you say, boy, we see more such and such color than the other color. Boy, but don't let that fool you, because over the years I found that most of the voters, the people who actually come to cast their ballot, they're wearing neutral colors. They don't wear red. They're not wearing yellow. They're not wearing blue. They're not wearing black. Green another time, see? So they come out in neutral colors, and they ain't wearing no emblem, no shirt that these parties giving us. They may have it home. Hey, you know, I got plenty red home, I got plenty yellow home. I ain't got no blue yet. Ain't nobody give me no blue. Hey, somebody please give me some blue, because I love to wear shirts later on. You ain't gonna see me wear none before the day, right? Boy, but after the day, I wear them with pride. All on them. So, that's me. I ain't getting in nobody's business. I need y'all to get in my business. Right? So, the reality is that the vast majority of voters vote their conscience. And the conscience of the people is what carry the election. And as my mentor and our first prime minister of the country said, when he first lost after 25 years, the people have spoken. I remember that clear as day. He was in Andres when the results came out, South Andres, his constituency. And he said over the radio, the people have spoken. And the voice of the people is the voice of God. And that was his concession speech. In other words, look, the people say they don't want me. The people say they want that for them. That's God say that. And let's go with that, because that's what the people want. He ain't worrying about what he want, or what his family and the South Androsians want. He's going with the volumes that the people spoke. And that's what we've been going with now forever. Right? The volumes. Even when the PLP won for the first time in 1967, it was the volume of the people. Because, prior to that, I don't think, perhaps one election before that, but I know that there was a time when you vote based on how much land you own. A woman couldn't vote. Females could not vote. Males only could have casted ballots. And if you own 10 pieces of land, you could cast 10 different ballots. If you own 1 piece of land, you could only cast 1 ballot. If you don't own no land, you ain't got no say, because you can't vote. That's how this country was. Well, of course, we've advanced leaps and bounds since those days. And now we got a fair system, and we would have heard our previous, one of the former prime ministers, former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram. He would have said that nobody could thief no election. Nobody could sneak nothing, because the system that we have is a fortified system. It ain't no system foolproof, but it's a very superb, strong system. And it's extremely difficult because we go in by, first of all, our register, we got the counterfoils, we got people trained who've been doing this thing all the time, and for you to slip one through, oh man, you don't know how difficult it is. See, they used to have the thing called floating ballots, eh? I've been around a little while. And I've voted plenty times, right? But you would hear about these floating ballots. In other words, they would have ballots that somehow they could sneak those ballots into the box. Now, see how this box thing go now. You know, I work as presiding officer before, so I think I'm qualified to say some things about how the procedure work. There's a ballot box that got to be checked between the people in the room. And when I say the people in the room, we're talking about the people who working for government that are there to oversee that particular room. And then, you know, the room is a polling division. The person in charge overall is the presiding officer. And the presiding officer is supposed to make sure everything goes fairly, right? And then you got the people who check in the counterfoil against your voter's card and all the rest of that to make sure you're in the register and all that. And then you got for each candidate, what I could recall is they were allowed up to 4 representatives in the room at all times. And that ballot box can't go nowhere out of their sight. Because those people go when one go for lunch, one come any place. So you got 4 seats for each candidate. That's 12 people. In some cases, 16. But you know, some of the candidates like the independent, they ain't got nobody in the room because they got so much rooms and so much polling stations. They say ain't get that kind of crowd. They independent. Boy, but I can tell you those major parties, they will have all those seats filled, and they will be watching that ballot box. And before the voting starts, that ballot box has to be opened. And every single one of those representatives could go in and inspect it. Make sure ain't no ballots in there. You see? So ain't no floating ballots can sneak in there. And all through the day until 6 p.m. when the polls close, they have an opportunity to be watching that. That box ain't supposed to move. And they can see everybody put their ballot, their single ballot, in the hole, in the slot. Because the box done lock. We done check it, everybody check it, and then we put a lock on it. And then at the end of the day, after 6 p.m., it's time now to reopen or open the box. So you unlock it, the presiding officer, and each ballot comes out one at a time. And each one of those representatives can have a look at that ballot to make sure it's clearly marked for who we're going to say it is. And you have what they call spoil ballots, right? Spoil ballots meaning, and I won't make this show too much about these ballots and these procedures, right? But the spoil ballots mean you either put your X on the edge of the box and it touch one of the lines, so you ain't sure where to go for this person or that person. So you gotta make sure that X is in the middle of the box. Make sure it ain't touching no line, right? Because that could be a dispute. If it touching a line, say, boy, look like they're gonna go to this one. So you want to make sure when you put that X, it ain't touching no other box. Plus, if there's a dispute, somebody walk in the room and somebody who's representing a candidate say, hold on, I have a problem, that person can't vote here. So what you mean you have a problem? That person is my neighbor and I don't live in this area. We live out east. So what they doing out west here? They can't vote here because they live next. I know this person. So of course, they saying they know the person. That ain't mean that. They made us know that person can vote against what they want. And they just make it a menace, right? So the presiding officer and his team, they don't know the person. They can't say, oh, you wrong. So the rules are, if that person shows up to vote and there's a protest to say that person will live in this district or this constituency, the presiding officer, because if the person's name is on the counterfoil to vote in that polling division, the presiding officer should allow that person to vote, but on what they call a yellow ballot. The ballots are all white. But the yellow ballot means if push comes to shove, this one is questionable. So that puts him to go in the booth and vote on the yellow ballot. And you may have quite a few people voting on yellow ballots because you may have somebody who name don't appear on the counterfoil, but somebody could vouch that yes, they live in this constituency and they have their voter's card or they have their passport, whatever the case may be. And they say, okay, well, you guys can vote on the yellow ballot because that may be a dispute based on how close this thing turned out, right? Now, if the thing turned out landslide, of course, them couple of disputes don't matter, right? Boy, but if you get a close tight one, they will matter. And those are the ones that will be further scrutinized if it becomes if an election court of the day. But that's what I learned as a presiding officer, right? And I want you all call me, but because that's the end of that. That ain't nowhere right now. That's just as I know it. Now, if you know it a little better, you probably could call and say, yeah, this is the way I know it. That's fine. But it's very difficult to slip one in on all of those hawks watching that box. Very difficult. Tonight, let's get going by time rolling, right? We wish to observe this anticipated, impending 2026 general election. We also want to remember and recall that 2 days prior to the elections is the 10th of May. And what did the 10th of May signify? In 1980, the 10th of May, that is the day that our country suffered its worst atrocity in the history of our country. Worst atrocity. We've never experienced anything worse than that. Because, of course, that's the day when one of our 103-foot patrol craft was destroyed by Cuban MiG fighter jets. And in the process, 19 men had to hit the water. Well, 19 minus 4 and 4 is 8, okay? Because we had some on the captured craft already. Them said they had to hit the water. But the ones who were on the patrol boat at the time had to all take a plunge and try to swim to one of those 2 captured craft, as we call them, the fishing boats that we had arrested, that created the scenery for the ship to be fired upon by the Cuban MiGs. Not only fired upon, sunken. And they were all in the water, and then the planes came back around and started shooting bullets in the water, trying to take them out, right? And we lost 4 men of the 19. And that, my dear friend, is the most catastrophic event ever suffered by this country, our wonderful, lovely Bahamas. And because this is May, there's no way we can let this month pass on this maritime show with the biggest maritime atrocity ever, and allow even politics, even the elections 2 days afterwards, to take away the attention that is due not only to the family of the 4 men that got killed on impact, and the family of the other 15 men, 4 of whom have since passed on, and the Defense Force in general in our country. We need to realize that 10th of May 1980 is etched in the history of our country for centuries to come. Centuries to come. No matter when it is, when May 10th comes around, this country will remember that we had a patrol boat blasted, bombed, sunken, by a neighboring country. 4 men were killed. The other men had to swim for their lives. And even later, they had to do some serious dodging and ducking and strategic maritime activities to avoid the rest of them being killed. And we got to talk about these things. You see, I've been doing a lot of research on this over the years. And I can't let it rest because I happen to have been a Defense Force officer. And in that regard, I know what it is to be faced not with a MiG fighter jet trying to destroy everybody on the ship that I'm on, but be faced with close quarters situation on the sea, period. So we want to discuss the facilitation. Well, first of all, we're going to deal with the Flamingo in the second half, right? Because let's finish with this voting thing first. Boy, the Flamingo too serious. We can't mix that up, all right? So let's stick with the impending general election. And we would all know that we just had an advance poll, which is usually and normally 2 weeks prior to the general. And the reason why you have to have the advance poll is because some of the people who could be working the election, particularly police personnel, Defense Force personnel, and some of those who are actually going to be serving as returning officers and presiding officers and that type of thing. You want to make sure they don't get their vote in so they don't have to be so distracted by going away from the venue to vote. Right? And this time around, for the first time, I think, for the first time since we were having elections, those seniors, once you were senior, you became eligible to vote in the advance polls. If you are challenged, you had an opportunity or an option to vote in the advance poll. And a lot of people took up that opportunity. And I think it was so overwhelming that there was not enough facilitation for a smooth flow of people showing up to vote. And then they had some mixing up and stuff like that. But I get into all that. That didn't happen, right? But some people just got discouraged and didn't vote at all. They figure, I ain't going through this. I'll wait for the big day. Because now if they didn't vote in advance poll, that don't mean they can't vote. All that means is they didn't vote in advance poll. But the name's still on the register and they still didn't vote yet. So on general election day. But what that did is it brought to light that we need some facilitation for voters. Because if you could be on that line for 2 hours, you know, it's okay for a young, fit person. But some of us, we can't stand up that long and be comfortable. Some of us, we need a restroom break. And what I think we need to focus on when the general election comes around in 7 days is making sure that the voter has an opportunity to go and use a restroom nearby and come back in the front of, or in the line wherever that person was before they went to use the restroom. Because if you gotta wait hours, come on, man, you gotta have some option of relief if you need to use the restroom. People in wheelchair, well, they seated, eh? They seated. So you got some people who are in wheelchair, but they only get one foot. You get some people who have this of bread. Some people be on the line and they real sick. They gotta take medication every so often. You don't know what these people gotta go through to be able to come on the line, and ain't nobody want to come on the line for no 2 hours or even an hour, right? But the people want to vote. Now, how important is that vote? See, what I suggest we do, and maybe we're gonna do it, I don't know, is ensure that you have some balance. Balance in the sense that for every 500 voters, we're going to have a room. Or every 300 voters, we're going to have a room. And from times gone by, history should reflect how we can have a smooth flow based on numbers. Do we need a room for every 100 persons? Do we need a room for every 500 persons? Do we need a room for every 1,000? But the reality is we can figure it out and make sure that it's evenly spread so that you don't want people to come to vote. Ain't nobody paying me to vote. So why should I go through punishment just to vote? It should not be a situation where I should even be faced with discouragement because of facilitation or the lack of facilitation. It's just nonsense. Show up to vote. It should be a reasonable period. When I get now, of course, you're gonna have periods when you get more people show up than others for other periods. And I always find that anytime after 4 o'clock, you're good. You ain't got to worry about doing no line. That's what I found to be in the past. I always vote after 4 because I ain't coming here to turn no line. That's the vote. Ain't that serious for me? Yes, I want to vote, but I ain't tell you I want to go through no challenges to vote. And there's a lot of people who ain't going through that. You know? So we need to work on facilitation for the voters while they're on the line. And we also got to work on the facilitation for voters where they're going to park. Because what I found in some previous elections was that I couldn't find no place near the gate to park. You definitely can't go through the gate. So I had to go around the corner neighborhoods where my car is at risk. And my person is at risk. Because I got to now walk, get out of my car after I didn't find a parking in front of someone's yard near the wall or whatever, and walk from there to the school. You can't even see the school where I park. So I could be abducted today. But I only come to vote. So why should I be faced with the risk of being out of sight of the authorities or out of sight of the voting facility just to park and gotta walk that distance to vote? But the people who ain't voting, the people who just monitoring things, the people who just representing a particular party or particular candidate, they got all the parking there, the gate or inside, but they ain't voting, not there. So voters are being inconvenienced because there's no space being allocated for them to come and cast their ballot and leave. And I may only want to, I just want to go to the line, vote and leave. So why can't you cordon off a space where there's a police or defense force or both officers to make sure that anybody parked there, show me your finger that you ain't voted yet, and show me a voter's card for this particular polling area. And then you could park, and we ain't gonna let nobody park in this area, which is right near the gate, unless they could we could verify that they're coming or they have the eligibility to come and vote. So the people who are working inside all those polling stations, they could park around the corner. They're not voters. They should not have choice parking places where voters really, you really setting this whole facilitation up for who? For the people who are working the election? Or for people who come in to vote in the election? We want the people to vote. So we should make it easy for them to come and safe for them to come to cast their ballots. Yes, there may be many people. You may have long lines. But they shouldn't have to go risking their vehicles and their persons at the expense of all those who are not voting. And you got some people who are just hanging around out front, just trying to get you to say, well, be with us. But that car right there in the way. So we need, from early morning hours, we need to rope off a section. And I talk about no little section because we want everybody who come in to vote to be able to park in that section. And you have more people coming to vote than those who ain't voting. So we need a big space on both sides of the entrance gate. Don't allow nobody else but voters to park in those spaces. And the police needs to monitor, defense force needs to monitor those areas to enforce that people who come in to vote have that easement in doing so. Don't allow those who are not voting to make it physically difficult for those who come to cast their ballot. Because I mean, a lot of people, ain't nobody getting paid to vote, Ain't nobody getting paid to vote. Some of them people out there, they're getting paid to be out there. But they clogging up on all the choice parking. So when the people who come to vote, and they got to walk so far just to come and vote because you got the wrong set of people clogging up the parking area near the gate. So I appeal to those authorities that are setting up those voting stations to think about the voter. Make life reasonably easy for the voter to come at any time of the day. Find a parking space someplace in the range of where that gate. They should be able to see the gate they got to walk to. Not go around the corner and park in front of someone's yard. And you need to rope that off from early in the morning so that the people who come in there to work, they know they can't park in that area. Go find parking somewhere else. I will give exception to the government appointed people who are running like the presiding officer and his team. And that's only about 6 people per room. You can let them even go inside, right? But you can't allow the majority of people who have nothing to do with it, with running or regulating that election, to take up the parking that the voters need. Anyway, I could talk, but I'll tell you blue in the face. They probably still ain't gonna do nothing. But you can't say I didn't tell you, right? The voice of the people. When they say the voice of the people, we're talking about the voice of the majority of the people. Is the voice of God, eh? So, I want to suggest, and some people may think this is a little off the cuff, but I want to suggest that we amend our constitution. And we can't amend the constitution unless you have a referendum. Now we know governments don't like referendum because they ain't never win. All referendums fail in this country. We never had a referendum that passed, right? Because they said that one for the gambling thing that wasn't a referendum, eh? So the referendums we've had so far continue to fail. But I would really like to see the constitution change in a way that we take some of that power away from one person I'm no politician. I don't like talk politics too much, right? But the way it is now, it says the leader of the party, and I'm not quoting, but this just summarizing it, eh? The leader of the party that gets the most seats during the election is automatically the prime minister. He ain't never say nothing about no deputy prime minister, so that don't exist in the Constitution, eh? Based on what I know. So the leader of whatever party wins the most seats becomes the prime minister of the country. And right now, we have 3 leaders, because independent, they ain't got no bunch of people. They independent, only them, right? So we got the PLP, we got the FNM, and we got the COI. And if either those 3 parties get the most seats during this election, that person automatically becomes the prime minister. And so, my recommendation would be, let's change that a little bit. Because once the prime minister is sworn in, I think he has up to 48 hours for the governor general to swear in whoever becomes the prime minister. And once that person is sworn, that prime minister now selects his cabinet. And how the procedure for that to happen depends on the party and how the party want to do things, right? But the onus is on the prime minister by law to say who he's going to have as his ministers for the various government agencies or departments or ministries. And I personally, I feel like that's just a lot of power for one man to do. As a matter of fact, I personally don't feel like you should have automatically the leader of a party becoming prime minister. And I say that because it is my view that the member of parliament, whoever wins that constituency, should have some kind of say in electing who is going to be first among equals, because that's what they call the prime minister. The prime minister is the first person among all the other MPs, not ministers, not MPs, because we're talking about the House of Assembly now. There's only one person that's above the others, and he's not really above them, but he's the first. He got the first say. He got the priority. First among equals. But if you have all equal going into the House of Assembly, and all those equals have a vote as to who they want to be the leader after all the constituencies have chosen who they want. So let's say they go into the House of Assembly the next day, and they have a vote off as to who we want to be our leader in this House of Assembly, who we want to be the first among equals. And take it a step further. Once they've decided who's going to be the first among equals, we are now going to elect each minister for the cabinet. And you could have a standard set of ministries like you do already. And if they want to change that, then the cabinet get together and they vote to change it. But you balancing the power, because the prime minister would have to be elected by those that the people put in the House of Assembly. And then each minister would have to be elected by those that the people put. So the people could at any time have some say with their minister or with their representative. Hey, look, we put you down. We prefer so and so to be. We want you to vote for so and so as the prime minister, as the first among equals. And then this is so far-fetched, but in common sense, as far as I see it, I think that would be a far better system than already knowing that one of these 3 people could be our prime minister. And we have no say in the matter. Because when the cookies crumble, whichever party has the most seats, that person automatically becomes prime minister. There's no electing prime minister among those who we put in the house. They have no say. So that's why I am saying this is a suggested amendment to the Constitution. It will have to happen by way of memorandum, not memorandum, but the thing is we call it referendum. It have to happen by way of referendum, and it have to be drafted by those people who have legal minds. I have no legal mind. As a boat captain, well, ship captain sound a little better, eh? But that's my view, and I only putting that out there. I died the first time I put it out there, but I'm putting it out there again. I don't think it can happen in my lifetime. I hope it could happen sometime down the line, because I think that this country will have a better balance of power. Because now you could recall who's your leader by just going to a vote in the House of Assembly and say we won't have a revote. We have a no confidence in the person we elected. We want to have a re-election to see who could be the first among equals. And it goes on from there, right? All right, finish with that. So I guess we could run to our first break and be talking maritime, people. You are listening to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain, and in studio, my producer for the night, of course, the maestro himself, Mr. Craig Gibson. At this point, we move to our first break, and when we return, we should delve into the HMBS Flamingos 1980 fatal destruction. So please, don't you dare touch that dial. We're going to move into it.
At One-on-One Pharmacy, our friendly staff is ready to serve you. Visit us today for all your prescription and over-the-counter needs at our East Street South or Charles Saunders Highway locations. We're open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from 9 to 4 on Sundays. In a rush? Send your refill scripts online at oneononepharmacy.com or ask about our convenient pickup service. One-on-One Pharmacy, providing personal health care with people at heart. At Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, we offer first-class maritime security services throughout the Bahamas and the wider Caribbean. As experts in maritime security, we specialize in production of ISPS assessments and plans, verification audits, certified familiarization training, and port security consultancy, just to name a few. Our services also include provision of a security force to maintain all required ISPS facility security compliance. For all your maritime security needs, visit us today in Nassau at our East Street South location or in Freeport in the Kipling building. Call us at 392-3515 or follow us on all social media platforms. Bahamas Maritime Connection, your leader in maritime security. Let's help you make the connection.
Sitting in the morning sun, I'll be sitting when the evening comes, watching the ships roll in, then I'll watch them roll away again. Yeah. I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away.
Gentlemen, you are listening to Maritime Matters. We're coming to you live from our Love 97 FM studios. On this show, Maritime Matters, we talk maritime. Okay, so we're throwing a little election tonight, but we normally talk maritime, eh? Maritime Matters is every week, that's weekly, at 17:05. That's, for those who don't know, military timing, or what we call maritime timing. That's 5:05 p.m. every Tuesday here on Love 97 FM. The primary purpose of our show is to sensitize Bahamians of opportunities in the maritime sector. We also cover current maritime issues from the domestic and international maritime feeds. The phone number to reach us, should you wish to get in on the discussion during our show, is 322-5477. You can also reach us on 322-5683. I repeat, 322-5477 or 322-5683. We will be more than happy to hear from you. To hear a replay of this show or any of our previous shows, simply hit us up at any time via our YouTube page. That's Maritime Matters Bahamas. Just go to YouTube on your electronic device and type into the search box Maritime Matters Bahamas. So let's talk maritime. As you know, on Sunday, this coming Sunday, that will mark, what's that, the 50th or 51st, 52nd, one of them, 50 plus years since the fatal sinking of the HMBS Flamingo while under attack by Russian MiG fighter jets flown by Cuban nationals, eh? And that is so significant to me because I'm a maritime man and I'm a former Defense Force officer. So that was the moment that spurred me into wanting to become a Defense Force officer. That when I heard that those men got killed and we lost a whole ship, I didn't know the details. I didn't need to know the details. But I was inspired to want to go there and defend our country. So we talk about how this all happened. And we got enough time to talk about this because, boy, there's a lot of details to cover, eh? The departure from Coral Harbor Base. Of course, it was a routine 10-day patrol plant. And back then, 10-day patrol was a lot. Because when I joined the force, a year and a half, 2 years later, when I came back from Dartmouth, our patrols were usually 7 days, right? But we were in smaller vessels. Now, the larger vessels like the Flamingo and the Marlin, which are two sister ships, they were the largest ships we had on the job. And this Flamingo was less than 2 years. It was around 2 years old when it got sank. So this is a brand new boat. And it was the largest ship, well, one of the two largest ships we had. Right? We had the flag carrier, which was the HMBS Marlin, P01, and then we had the Flamingo, P02. I mean, they were beautifully built by Vosper Thornycroft and all the rest of it, right? But okay, so the ship got sank. But they were galvanizing the crew. And of course, you know, in Defense Force, when you go in the sea, you're going to get your last hail, tell your mommy you're gone, tell your girlfriend, oh, we're gone, I could be back in 10 days, whatever the case may be. And you basically grab your stuff and you head to the base and you go to sea. And that's what happened. All of the 19 crew members left the base. That was on that Thursday, the 8th of May, 1980. And they sailed that evening and stopped at Green Key. And I'm talking from memory now because I've did the research on this stuff. And I didn't sail the water, so I know what they're talking, right? They stopped at Green Key, and then that's something that a lot of us did. Because if you leave the base in the evening and you going down to the Ragged Island area, right, which is where they were headed, and you call it the Great Bahama Banks. You got to go through, is it Blossom Channel, they got Lark Channel, they got Flaming Channel, they got a couple channels. We usually would go to Blossom because that was the widest one for us, right? Some people like Lark because that's the deepest one and all the rest of that. So, before you get down there though, because that's the very bottom of the tongue of the ocean, those 3 channels, those 4 channels, they're at the very bottom of the tongue of the ocean. Those who don't know, the tongue of the ocean runs along the whole island of Andros. Right? So, on one side is Andros, on the other side is that bank. And in between is the ocean. That's called the tongue of the ocean because it's shaped like a tongue if you really look at it from the top, eh? And Commander Amos Roll at the time, he might have been lieutenant commander, but we call him Commander Roll, right? He was the captain. And with him was his 2 officers. Captain Anthony Allens was his executive officer, who was at the time a sub-lieutenant or full sub-lieutenant. And then we had the one we call Cool Breeze. Can't remember his name. He was an acting sub-lieutenant. Looking at his face, and may his soul rest in peace because he's passed on since that incident, eh? So those of you who remember, you can always call in and remind me what Cool Breeze's name was. I know his name, I just can't remember it while I'm talking live and just recollecting, right? So, Sans. Cool Breeze was the Sans. And there were some senior rates. The most senior of the senior rates, as I recall it, was First Chief Petty Officer. Well, he at the time was a leading seaman, right? Leading seaman Peterson James. And of course, he and I would have shared time on the show as well. And sometime during this month, we'll replay the show that Peterson James and I did, right? And he would have been the most senior one. And then you had some petty officers. No petty officers. He was a leading seaman. No, he was a petty officer at the time. Then you had 1 or 2 leading seamen. And then you had probably 1 or 2 able seamen and so on and so forth. But that's the hierarchy of the vessel at the time. And they had 19 people in total, including the 2 cooks who I know very well. One of them still with us, and one of them passed on. Leo Kirby was the one that passed on already. And we got Anthony Sanders, who I think now lives in Andros, right? But they were the 2 cooks at the time. And then we had the chief mechanic, Dusty Miller. I think he was a petty officer at the time as well. And so these were the veteran people back then in 1980. Remember now the force, and at the end of March, I think the 30th of March, the force had just become a legal institution. They don't need the powers of the police force no more. They became a legal institution, a force that could make arrests on their own. They had powers to do things now because the Defense Force Act was now legislated as an act of parliament. And, excuse me, those men went out on a vessel that was like less than 2 years old, around 2 years old. And they went out to do a patrol like we normally go out and do patrols, thinking you're either going to make 1 or 2 arrests and come home, or you ain't going to find nothing and they come home after 10 days, right? And they stopped at Green Key, because Green Key is halfway to the Blossom Channel area, the area which you got to go through to get to the Great Bahama Banks, where really they were looking for poachers. They were going to look for poachers. They stop at Green Key because that's a nice spot, because you could fish in, you could do, Green Key is a place where you know where you are. You know that you can probably throw your line out and catch some fish, and you just want to take it easy till the next morning. And that's what they did. And the next morning they weighed anchor, went through Blossom, and they went to Key Lobos first, which is basically due south. It's an area that if you're going to Cuba, it's halfway to Cuba. So It's on the extreme end of the Great Bahama Bank, joining into the Santorin Ocean. The Santorin Ocean is that ocean that separates the Bahama Bank from Cuba. Because you know Cuba have a long coast. And our Great Bahama Bank have a long coast, almost as long as Cuba. So they went to Key Lobos, and when they were approaching Key Lobos, and you know Key Lobos, prior to that, Key Lobos had a stigma, because one time they met, Defense Force vessel went out to Key Lobos and they met a whole slew of Haitian nationals. They were stranded on Key Lobos, maybe the boat sink or whatever the case, but they were on Key Lobos. They had to swim there and we went there, and this was before 1988. This was before the Flamingo sank, and it was put in the Miami Herald, I think it was, that Bahamians are beating the Haitian national who were refugees, who were hungry and all the rest of it. And I think we got a bad sting on the Defense Force then. And as a result of that, it hit the Miami Herald. I think they had some Coast Guard planes fly over, take some pictures or something to that effect, right? And after that, you know, the Defense Force dubbed that key low blows. In other words, they were throwing low blows, etc., etc. But that's neither here nor there. The HMBS Flamingo anchored off Key Lobos that night. Well, of course, they fishing again and get bite up a little bit of mosquito. But that's how we used to roll, right? So we went to Key Lobos and spent Friday night. Now Thursday night was Green Key, Friday night was Key Lobos. And so we weighed anchor from that area because they combed there, but as they were approaching Key Lobos, they saw a Cuban fishing vessel heading into the Santorin Channel. In other words, somehow that fishing vessel was leaving as the Flamingo was approaching. So either they had some information that a patrol boat is heading in that area and they pick up all the Georgie bundle and left, or they were just so fortunate to leave right in time. And Commander Roll said, we're not going to chase them, they're in the ocean. You know, we ain't chasing them, let them go. That's why that one wasn't arrested, because now they would have go chase them in the ocean to arrest them, and that probably would have been a little wrongish, right? So the next morning when they got up, they left Key Lobos area and they went straight along the strips. There's another key. Which key I'm forgetting? But anyway, they went along the strips and they went into the area of Ragged Island itself. And they were preparing to drop anchor, as I recall my research. And the commander said, hey, look here, we're not going to stop you, man. Let me just, because this was around 3-4 o'clock in the evening. He said, let me just go across the Columbus banks and check Key Santo Domingo, and then we'll come back. And so said, so done. They didn't stay off Ragged Island anymore. Some of the fellas already done start putting on the cologne and think they want to take the thing and go ashore, right? Because you know that boat couldn't get into Ragged Island now, but it's just too big, too much draft, right? So they went due south, and as they were approaching Key Santo Domingo, they pick up something on the radar. Contact! You know, I can tell you. And when you get a contact in those areas, you know, it only could be somebody who shouldn't be there. Because Bahamians never really fished in the Key Santo Domingo, at least not the big fishing boats. They didn't go that far down. They would go across the Key Lobos, the Key Sal, and those areas, but not Key Santo Domingo. Much Bahamians used to go down there to fish, right? So they pick up a contact on the radar before they even could see it. Because you know the radar can give you a good 24 miles of contact before you could see it with the naked eye. And as they got closer, they realized that, hold on now, this ain't one contact, there's two. There's two vessels out there. And of course, the Flamingo went into what you call action station. You know, in Defense Force, when we say action station, that means all special sea duty men close up. The one that we know we put on the wheel because he can steer good, and that's normally the coxswain or the one in charge of all the ratings. That probably is Peterson James. That person will come in the bridge and take the wheel from whoever's steering, and the ones who were the boarding team, they would go to the armory, get their weapons, and they would start getting ready to go on board. And the ones who were supposed to get the dinghy overboard, they would go and they would get the dinghy overboard. And then people move into their roles when action station is called, because you got a station bill telling everybody what their job is. And that's how ships roll in general, not only military. So action station was called, and they caught up with the boats. Well, of course, back then, we didn't have the exclusive fishery zone of 200 miles. We had 12 miles. Once you're within 12 miles of any Bahamian bank or rock or land, and you're fishing, you're illegal. So we know that we had them because they were like a mile and a half off Key Santo Domingo, not even 3 miles, one door, but 6 or 12. So we know we got them. And of course, the Flamingo was good for 26 knots on a sprint, eh? They were fast boats. And those fishing boats can't do no speed. So we caught up with them, put 2 boarding parties on, because of course, they were loaded. So we hooking them up now saying, hey, we bringing them home to Papa. Because they don't catch a lot of our fishery products and we bringing them to Nassau. So what we usually would do is what we did. We put 4 men on one, 4 men on the next. And while we were rigging them and getting them ready, because one of the vessels we had to shoot out the Flamingo, had to dismantle the engine in order for it to stop. Because they was running and they wasn't checking for stopping. So once we shoot out, cause one engine to be dismantled, the other one automatically stopped. And then we had the 2, we put boarding teams on the 2, and we took over the vessel, say. And right now we just stand, because it's evening time now. Remember now, it's 5, 6 o'clock. And evening time means time to eat. So the food is being dished out while the boarding teams were preparing for a long voyage on the captured crafts with their weapons. And while all that was going on, the Cuban MiGs came. Because you know, these Pharaoh vessels, they always name Pharaoh 56, Pharaoh 120, 180, 240. So these were 2 Pharaoh boats, which means they belong and owned by the Cuban government. They were fishing for the Cuban government. And somehow, because now remember, before the Flamingo and the Marlin came around, we never really used to patrol those far out areas, because the little 60-footers ain't had enough fuel to really go all the way out there and come back without fueling up. So we never said let the 60-footers go that far. But when the Flamingo and Marlin came, they had enough that they could do a whole loop with no problem. And these Cubans, or these Cuban government vessels, they were familiar with coming into our Great Bahama Bank and fishing, and they thought there was nothing wrong with it, because that's their fishing ground. Because Defense Force used to be around to do that. Even they had no Defense Force back then, right? So this is a transition that even them are trying to fathom what the hell going on here, who these fellas is, and of course they radioed in and said we got some people trying to take our fish. They know it was a patrol boat. And so the MiGs were sent out. And the MiGs came and they just flew very low and they looked from the cockpit straight into our bridge and they were like, hey, let our people go. Of course, they ain't saying nothing. Boy, but they buzzing. And of course, our crew, our men, would have gotten a little nervous, because this ain't something we used to, eh? We should be able to arrest ships in our territory for breaking our law and bring them in. And the MiGs left. And a couple minutes later, the MiGs returned. And you know what happened when they come back? They come back to do damage. And the first missile rocked the bridge. Boom! Went straight through the bridge in the radio room. Right? The next one hit the hull. The next one hit the... They had big holes in the side of the boat. And while all this was happening, men was on deck eating. And so the ship started to go down. And with all he had, the commander told the crew, abandon ship. And if your ship getting blow up, you ain't never experienced this before now, because we supposed to be the ones who, your ship getting blow up. And then they release the life raft. They throw the life raft in the water like we get in a life raft. And you know what the MiGs did with the life raft? Brrr, sink it. So the ship going down, the life raft sink. You ain't got time to put your sea rider overboard. That's your next little dinghy, right? Because they done damaged that area, so that crane now ain't gonna wait for you. Plus you ain't got no time. The ship going down. So everybody had to hit the water and swim for it. And we have stories of some of our men saying as they stroked forward, the bullet just came underneath their arm. Some of them saying they were tired. When they look around, they just getting encouraged by others. They gotta keep swimming. They now have to swim from where the Flamingo was when they hit the water to where the captured fishing boats were, because there were only two things left, and one of them was starting to sink. So you got all those men in the water swimming for their life, and while they swimming, the MiGs came back and they started firing bullets in the water at them. Right? And when they made it to the fishing boat and the MiGs left, it started to get dark. So they were saved by the dark. Right? And they did a head count. And the head count was done by my good friend, former Force Chief Petty Officer Peterson James, who was the senior rating on board. He did a head count and reported to the commander. 4 men are missing. That's when the panic started. And they went in the little dinghy that they had, looking for those 4 men, calling out their names. And it got dark and they still looking and calling out names, hoping that one of them would say, oh, yeah, or something like, because you don't want none of your friends. You remember now when you have to see you got each other back. Everybody's friends. We ain't want nobody not come back home. So this is the agony that these fellas is going through. So they all realize now, boy, it's dark. We don't look for them, ain't nothing we can do. So they took the fellas from the other captured craft that was sinking, the smaller one, and the 8 men, the 8 fishermen, along with the 15 Defense Force personnel that survived, or that were living, that they was able to make it to the boat, were all on one boat, and they started to head for Key Santo Domingo. Now remember they're in the ocean, because Key Santo Domingo is basically surrounded on the southern side by ocean. Well, of course, the northeast, the north to northeastern side is the Columbus Bank. And so they were in the ocean heading back toward Cuba, and that's where they were caught. So the commander, after they got together and they prayed, and they were all sorrowful. Some of them just bareback. Remember now, they were swimming for their life, and some of them rip off the cover. Some of the coveralls actually had bullet stains on them, because that's how close some of the bullets from the MiGs came to some of the men, right? And so Commander Roll told them, look, we still got to move on, gentlemen. Let's get out of here. And they headed back toward Key Santo Domingo. And because it was dark, Commander Roll decided, gentlemen, we're gonna put out these lights. We're gonna darken ship because we don't want nobody to see us. Now, see, Commander Roll was very instinctive. He's a sharp. Come on, he was the best. He's considered to be the best captain the Defense Force ever had, and I telling you that. I've been with plenty good captains, but he had instincts like I don't know what. I mean, his soul continued to rest in peace. And Commander Roll told everybody on board, we're gonna darken ship. We're gonna head back toward Ragged Island. You know, he didn't want to remain in the area, and the vessel was operational, but it took a while for them to get that fishing boat moving, because in their infinite wisdom, the men on board the fishing vessel took the steering pin out. See, and this is one of the things they do, you know, because they don't want to use their own fuel. They just say, oh, the engine kaput. The engine ain't running no more. The engine have a problem. They just actually take the fuel pump off, or they will sabotage their own engine once they capture it, so that you could pull them to Nassau. Because they don't, two things. First of all, they don't want to use up their fuel while you have them captured going away from where they need to go. And second of all, whenever they come to court and they release, they want to make sure the fuel's still in their boat. So they can make sure something wrong with the engine, eh? But the guys dismantle the steering. Well, of course, if you can't steer, you might as well not use the engine, eh? Because you can't direct where the vessel can go. And one fellow we had, who was the chief engineer of the lot, one Dusty Miller. Can't remember Dusty first name, but all us know him as Dusty Miller, right? He's from Eleuthera, Hatchet Bay. Dusty decided something ain't right, and he saw that the steering pin wasn't in place, and he searched for it, and he gone into the bilge of that boat. The bilge meaning underneath the boards which you stand on, eh? Gone in the bilge and found that steering pin and replaced it where it's supposed to be. So now the vessel could steer. The vessel could run. And in order to see the compass, because now pitch dark, the boat compass ain't got no light. You can't turn on the boat light because you don't want to be seen from the sky. Because Commander Roll know those mixes coming back. He had an instinct. These fellas coming back to look for us, right? And Dusty decided we ain't got no light, but we got to see north on this compass. Because everybody know you got to go north to get back to Ragged Island, eh? And Dusty had some cigarettes, and he was smoking. As he smoked his cigarette, the light from the cigarette provided light for the fellow who's steering to continue to see where north was on that compass, so he could keep steering north. And while all of this was going on, as they put Key Santo Domingo on their stern and headed north, when they got 5-6 miles away from Key Santo Domingo, now you're still seeing that light, because that's a lighthouse. That's a light, right? A light. So they know Key Santo, and then they saw star shells. The planes came back. They sent that big chopper and the mix. They came back in the pitch of dark, and they lit up Key Santo Domingo like daylight. And those guys could see how they lit up, because they probably thought they went to Key Santo Domingo and they was going to stay there till the next morning. But boy, good thing they got that steering pin, they got that vessel going, and the wisdom of the commander to turn off a blackened ship, or darkened ship as we call it, to make sure that they couldn't see them, because if they see them, they're coming to them. If they could light up a whole key, you think they would come and light up where they was and make sure, try to get them in, and nobody know what's going on now. As far as they're concerned, they sing the ship and nobody know they can take them in and probably sing that one too. So crew escaped. They escaped the return of the MiGs and the choppers. And they made it to Ragged Island. And when they got to Ragged Island, I remember this is south part of Ragged Island. This is going through the canal where you get a dock and all that. No, they come to the south side on the banks, and they had to walk, because the boat couldn't get all the way to the land. So they had to, when they hit the bottom, when they grounded the boat, they had to walk, and there was a track road that led from that southern Anchorage area to the town or the settlement, Duncan Down. And they happened to have had 2 men on board from Ragged Island. And I know all this because I did plenty of research on it. We've been doing this now for 3-4 years. And those 2 men, whom I know very well, of course, we already mentioned Leo Kirby, the cook. May his soul rest in peace. And one of those men still live among us, John Wallace. He's also from Ragged Island. Those were the 2 men who were able to direct all those 15 men along with 8 fishing, the men who were on the fishing boats. We call them, what we used to call them back in the day, not prisoners. Anyway, the prisoners. They took, all of them went through the track roads, and they found the police residence. Well, they didn't find it. They knew where it was. They went to the police residence, and the police made a call at 1 o'clock in the morning to Nassau to tell them the men of the Flamingo are on Ragged Island. The ship was sunken by the Cuban MiGs, and they have the 8 prisoners with them and all the rest of that. And they were facilitated in different houses around Ragged Island. And guess what happened the next morning? The Cuban fighter jets came to Ragged Island along with some big helicopters. They landed on the airway because now, after that message went through, remember the Sunday morning, Mother's Day, May 10th, not May 10th, May 11th, right? Sunday morning. And they rock the island of Ragged Island, where the coated trees was dancing and prancing from the wind from those MiGs. And before they got there, the DC-3 left Nassau with the Commodore Defense Force and the Commissioner of Police. And they went to Ragged Island to bring the fellas back home in the DC-3. And that DC-3 sat on the runway, and the Cuban chopper came and landed on the runway, and nobody, because men came out with guns, and the men and the Commissioner of Police and the Commodore Defense Force, none of them was able to move for about 3-4 hours. And then they had another chopper come and land in the area where the boat was, because they saw the fishing boat. That's how they know the men were on island, eh? And they walked through the track road looking for their men, but of course they didn't find them. The only thing they didn't do is come and start breaking down doors to say, we come for our men. And you know what saved the day? They sent 2 fighter jets from Miami High Air Force Base, U.S. When those fighter jets came down, I think it was the F-14s, they circled that area, and when the Cubans saw that, the Americans here, they left. And only after they left, the men were able to come in that DC-3 and be brought into Nassau. And of course, okay, we got 5 minutes left. Of course, you look like nobody can call, so I ain't worrying about y'all no more. Of course, y'all want the numbers again? 322-3633. When they left, they came to Nassau and they took the men on the base. And they interviewed them. And the next day or the same night, I understand, they took all of those men, they couldn't go home, and they put them on the HMBS Marlin and send them back out to sea. You know, All the stress they just gone through, they send them right back out to sea because they say they don't want them mixing up and spreading this and then. So they don't want them talking to regular people and stuff. So they send them right back. This is the information I got from some of the men who was on the trip, who went under this, who undergone this attack, right? And that is the story, my dear friends, of the sinking of the HMBS Flamingo, or attack and destruction of the HMBS Flamingo, and the 4 men that got killed. And then we had 4 men that died subsequent to that event. And the other 11 are still here with us. And we see them from day to day. And we don't know what some of them are going through. We don't know what they went through then. And I got to know some of them. I didn't realize at the time when I was on the defense force working among these guys, these were the guys who were on the Flamingo when it sank, some of them. Because I worked with them and I really, and I looking, in hindsight, I can see, I say, boy, I thought something was a little edgy with this fella, because this thing had an impact on them, still have an impact on them. And guess what? No reparation was paid by the Bahamas government to any Bahamian Defense Force member who went through that ordeal, who underwent all of that problem. They did not take those men for counsel. They send them right back out to sea. Now the Cuban government paid some $5 million, I understand it to be. And I think it was $4.5 million. Or was it $4 million? $3.5 million went to replace the Flamingo. And each of the 4 men that got killed, their family got $100,000 for each one of them, which is a lot of money back in the 80s, eh? But again, laughable if you look in hindsight at what they should have gotten, what the other men should have gotten. They kept them in the defense force. Some of them had to leave because they just don't want to be a part of the defense force no more. Some of them, they still are affected by this incident. And they got absolutely no reparation for what they went through from the Bahamas government. The only thing that was paid is for the 4 men that got killed, and that was paid by the Cuban government. Our government never gave a red cent to any of those men that went through all of that trauma. And I see y'all in one call. Y'all must don't like my story today. Y'all want to talk politics, eh? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, with that, our show come to a close. Now, next week, Tuesday. Need I say anything? Next week, Tuesday, is election day. So when 6 o'clock come, you know the deal. The returns start coming in. So this radio station would have no time for no talk show. I don't care who the talk show was for. So I wouldn't be here next week, but the following week, I'll be back. When we'll have a new administration in running our government. Whether it be the Davis administration repeating, whether it be the Pintard administration coming in for the first time, or whether it be the Bain administration coming in for the first time, we will have a new administration that we, the voters, are going to march in. That being said, I thank my producer, Mr. Craig Gibson, for doing what he does so well. I thank you, my dear listener, for continuing to listen and support Maritime Matters. Thank our sponsors, Bahamas Maritime Connection, 101 Pharmacy, and up there in Freeport, Island Care Pharmacy. Good night to my good old Annie Mae. Can't forget Annie Mae, 93 years and going strong. And as always, I say to you, Maritime Matters, tick, 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 tick. Out.
Sitting in the morning sun, I'll be sitting when the evening comes, watching the ships roll in, then I'll watch them roll away again, yeah. watching the tide roll away, sitting on a darker bay, wasting time. Look like nothing's gonna change, everything still remains the same. I can't do what it takes, so I guess I'll remain the same. Sitting here resting my bones, and the next won't leave me alone. This 2,000 miles I roam just to make this drop my home. Now I'm just gonna sit at the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away, sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time.
At One-on-One Pharmacy, our friendly staff is ready to serve you. Visit us today for all your prescription and over-the-counter needs at our East Street South or Charles Saunders Highway locations. We're open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from 9 to 4 on Sundays. In a rush? Send your refill scripts online at oneononepharmacy.com or ask about our convenient pickup service. One-on-One Pharmacy, providing personal health care with people at heart.